previous topic we created this decryption profile. Now let's see what is our next step. So in the next step we need to create the policies, and we going to create the policies related to security policy and decryption policy. But I would suggest to first create a decryption policy, because in some cases what happen, we create the security policy but we forget to create this decryption policy, and in that case what happened, the URL filtering doesn't work, or the client tried to access the web URL, maybe website, but it doesn't work. So it happens because this decryption policy was failed to create. And the another reason of creating this decryption policy, because we want to target some of the important policy. So let's discuss about this. So I have created this template. One is for decryption policy and another is for security policy. So we will discuss like this both one by one, but let's first talk about the decryption. So into the decryption policy, first we have the serial number, which means which policy would be our first policy, and in which we are going to have the no decryption policy. Now you might be thinking like, why do we need to have no decryption policy? Because our aim is to decrypt the traffic, right? So the question is right, but there are some of the category we should not be decrypting. For example, the category related to financial services, category related to health and medicine services, and category related to government websites or something like that. Because what happened, this category, for example, the financial services carry some banking websites, they carry the information related to credit card or debit card. Then the health and medicine related, they carry the information related to your insurance or something like that. And then of course the government related website, because they carry the information related to government, maybe some confidential information, right? So we should not want this website to be decrypted, because if someone on the like at the firewall side, if the watches the traffic, for example, if you have this firewall and the firewall is basically decrypting all this, the traffic, and someone is in there, maybe who can be, it can be attacker, it can be IT person. If the person is watching this traffic and he knows about the decryption thing, then he can read all the information which is coming to the firewall, right? He might be having some Wireshark and he can download the Wireshark on the PC and he can start making sense of all this traffic, right? Like what is going through the firewall. So we should not want these are the confidential website to be decrypted. So first we're gonna target we are going to target a no decryption policy, and we want source can be any, like any desktop user, going to destination like any, and these are the categories we do not want them to decrypt, right? So that is the reason we're going to put the action which is do not decrypt. So now let's go to firewall and configure this policy. So in order to configure policy, we need to go into the policy section, and there are like multiple policies, right? Like related to security policy, NAT, quality of service, and so many. But we need to focus upon the decryption policy. As you can see, there is no any policies, right? So we need to click upon add, and it's going to ask you the same question what we have in the Excel sheet. For example, let's go back to Excel. It says like policy number 1, of course, no decryption. So let's go and add the policy name, which is no decryption, for example, and then you can put any decryption. This policy is related to like all users or something like that, so you can put decryption, no decryption for all users, for example, right? Now the source we know like the zone has to be where the user are connected. So in our case they are going to be from local area network, and if you want you can also target the policy to specific department or subnet, or maybe specific user if you have like a user ID enabled, right? But at this point we want it to be no decrypt for all the users and when they are going to destination. So in destination we need to define they are going to internet, right? And destination address, even you can provide like specific destination address, for example Microsoft related, right? We can have these more and more complex policies once you start making URL filtering on next level, right? Since this is going to be decryption policy for all the users, so we're going to say any. Now let's go to service and URL category. Now in here you are going to basically target which are the category you want to exclude from decryption. So we're going to click upon add, and here we're going to search all the category. So first we want like financial related website, we do not want to be decrypt. Other is related to health and services, we do not want decrypt. Other is government, right? So we do not want decrypt. There can be many websites, if you do not want them to be decrypt, you can put all those categories in here, but these are like the main 3 categories, but you can add few more categories if you feel that they should not be decrypt. Now the next is option. Now here's like the policy is going to be take the action. So here you see like do not decrypt option and decrypt option, right? So we want action to be not decrypted, right? And then it's going to ask you this type, which is SSL forward proxy, or it's going to be SSH proxy or SSL inspection. So since we are using this firewall as a web proxy, so we are going to use option which is SSL forward proxy. And then after that we need to select the decryption profile we created. As you remember, in last topic we created this profile, which is decryption profile for users, and that is something we're going to call, because when the user is going to request the traffic, or when the user is going to request for the website, they are going to match this decryption profile. So it may be related to website may have some expired certificate, those kind of thing. If you remember, like we created non-decryption profile. So let me say okay in here, so we'll have a little bit discussion what I mean. So if I go to objects in the decryption profile, if I click upon this, we have this no decryption profile, right? And in there we given the criteria for the certificate the action should be taken, which is like block session when the certificate is expired, something like that. And if there is untrusted issuer, then block session, right? So this is something is going to come under this policy. So let's click upon this again, and our option is like we are selecting SSL for proxy. We have selected the decryption profile for users. So we have selected all the options we require in order to do not decrypt the traffic, right? Then after that we need to just press upon OK. So we have created our first policy, which is do not decrypt the traffic related to this confidential websites. Now the next policy we are going to create for all users, and it has to be decrypted. So we're going to click upon add, and in there we're going to put the name. So let's go back to Excel sheet. In Excel sheet we have decryption, right? So let's put the same name, which is like decryption, and it's going to like for all users if you want to make more sense with the policy name, because this is like a template policy, and these are the 2 template policies you are going to have. Then in future we're going to have more policies. Once you're going to maybe having some issue with some of the website, we are going to discuss about that later, but this is like our the policy for all users for decryption. Now let's click upon source, and in there the traffic is coming from local area network. Source is going to be any, because I want to target all the users. Then destination is going to be my internet, and destination is any. Now the next we need to click upon service and URL category. Now in here either you can go like one by one all the categories, but it would be better if we just click upon any. The reason, because when the traffic is coming in from all the users, we do not want to be selected category, because we already did non-decryption profile, which we do not want to be decrypted, right? Now we want every traffic to be decrypted, whether it's related to like social networking website, related to gaming, or maybe adult, or maybe related to even like the production traffic. We want them to be decrypted, so we are going to select upon any. Now in the options we need to select which is decrypt the traffic, because our goal is to decrypt the traffic when the source is sending requests to the destination on internet for any website. Now in the type we need to again select the forward proxy, and in decryption profile we need to choose the same decryption profile we created for all the users, right? Once all the options are selected, just press upon OK. So now we have created two policies. The first policy related to do not decrypt traffic if it is going for financial website, maybe related to government or health. And the second policy we created, we want to decrypt all the traffic. It doesn't matter which category it belongs to. So our next step is going backwards related to security policy. So now let's go and create the policy related to security. To create policies related to security, we need to just select the option at the top, which is security. And as you know, we have already created few policies. So let's do one thing, let's delete these two policies, because let's assume this is our new firewall and we want to achieve this firewall working as a web proxy, right? So let me do commit. So we will make the policies in here as per our Excel sheet. So let's go in Excel sheet, we have security policy section, and in here let me zoom little bit. Alright, so let's discuss about the security policies we are going to create while it is committing. So in security policy, we are going to create the policies like one by one. So first policy is going to be like our default policy. If you go from the bottom to top, this default policy, as you can see on the firewall, let's go into the firewall. This is like related to intra-zone default and inter-zone default. So for example, we have this firewall, right? And on this firewall we have many interfaces. Let's assume we have this 1/1 interface, and we given the name to this interface, which is internet zone, right? And we have like another interface which is 1/2, and we given the zone name which is local area network or LAN. Now let's say in future we want to add one more switch on this particular firewall, and let's say we have connected one more switch in here. For example, this is one of the switch, and this interface is using on firewall which is 1/3, but we want this switch to be part of the local area network, right? So what we're going to do, basically we're going to say this interface that you are the part of the local area network zone. So we have two interfaces, one which is 1/2, other 1/3, and they are the part of the local area network, and that is something we call intra-zone, right? So you might know already. So this is the intra-zone traffic. When the intra-zone traffic is going back and forth between these two interfaces, then the default action is going to be allow, right? But when it is like interzone, for example, when the traffic is going from local area network to internet, that is something we know that is interzone traffic, and the action is default deny. So this is our default policy we're going to have on the firewall. So now what we're going to do, basically we're going to create our own custom policies for URL filtering. Now let's go back to our template created into the Excel sheet. Since we know this default policy already available on firewall, now let's go on the firewall and create this first policy. To create policy, we need to just click upon add, and it's going to ask us all the information. So the policy name, let me give the policy name which is desktop internet, and it's going to be for all users. So let me be more specific, because in future I'm going to understand from this name which policies belong to, because in future I might going to have more policies related to marketing team or maybe sales team, something like that. So I have given this particular name for all users. Now it's going to ask source. So what is my source? So I'm going to select source, which is related to my local area network. Well, in the Excel I have given source zone as an inside. It can be sometime people write as a trusted, or it can be any name. Is just our basic understanding when the traffic is moving from in to out. So what zone you want to select? So I have given the zone name, which is local area network, right? Now the source address, since source address I want to target all the desktop users coming in, so I'm going to select which is any, right? Now in source user I'm also going to select any, because I want all the users should be targeted. But for example, if you have enabled the user ID, you can be more specific. You can click upon add, and you can be more specific which user ID you want to target. But at this point I'm going to add any, right? Now the next is destination. In destination, of course, I'm going to select internet, and in Excel, as you can see, it is outside zone. Now IP is any in here, so let me select IP because I do not know which IP available on internet, so I'm going to select any. Right now the next one is application. I'm going to select any because I want to target all the application going to internet. And then next is services. Here you can be more specific. For example, you can select like HTTP or HTTPS traffic, but there are like other dependency are also available when the traffic is moving. For example, DNS related traffic, or if user are using some of the application that might be using some random port, right? So for now I'm going to select any because I want all the traffic to be watched, and if anything I want to be more specific, I'll watch the traffic and I'll be like more specific in the future. Now I have selected any for services. Now next one is URL category. Now in here you can also select the custom category if you have created. For example, we created the custom which is social networking website, right? So what will happen when you select this specific, then the policy is going to apply for this specific URL category. But I do not want the policy related to one category because I want the policy related to all the categories, so I'm going to select any. Now the next is action. So what is my action? And this is very important section because by using the profile type we are going to make this firewall to work as a web proxy. So in the profile type we are going to have a couple of options. We will discuss this both. Now let's say I have created one of the URL filtering profile, as you remember. Now let's say I want to target that URL category into this profile. So what I'm going to do, basically I can just click upon profiles, and as you can see I'm going to get all these options, and it is related to other profile as well. For example, for antivirus, related to vulnerability protection, and so on, right? Now the profile we created, it's going to come under the URL filtering profile. So as you can see, it is showing us that is profile desktop users, so we can select upon this. Now our job is not going to end here because you might thinking, okay, I have selected this, I can press OK and the job is done, right? But this is not recommended as a security best practices, because when you purchase advanced URL filtering license and when you try to download the categories, sometimes it gives you the error that related to your threat protection plugins are not updated, something like that. And that is because when you are visiting the website may have some kind of vulnerability or maybe malicious website, firewall wants its threat protection to be updated, right? And that is the reason you should not select just one option, which is URL filtering profile, because other option, as you can see, these are all done as a none, which means they are not going to be checked, right? And that is not a good practice. So before that we need to work upon the profiles related to antivirus, related to vulnerability protection, related to anti-spyware, the file blocking if you want to block file related to exe, something like that, and related to data filtering and wildfire analysis, right? But for now let's say okay, and we can just jump upon those are the profiles we can create in a summary, right? So let's go to objects, and let's say in the objects we have the security profiles, and under that there is antivirus profile. So all you can do is you can either clone this profile and you can make the custom. For now let's do the clone, and we are going to use the same profile, and then in future like you can do the tweaking based upon that. Now let's say I'm going to create this policy as an antivirus. So this policy is created. Now I'm going to create profile for the anti-spyware, whether default or strict. So let's say I'm going to use the strict policy, and I'll press upon OK, and I'm going to give it name so that I can understand. So which is anti-spyware, right? Anti-spyware. Now other is vulnerability protection. I'm going to use the default policy, or maybe strict. Let me take strict. I'll just clone, and I'm gonna give it a name which is strict policy. Alright, now the next is file blocking. Let's say we are going to use one of the file blocking, which is strict file blocking. I'm going to use the clone and press OK. Give it a name, anything name related you want, file blocking profile for example. Okay, now the next is wildfire analysis. I'm going to select the default one, and I'm going to give it a name which is, let's say, wildfire WF, right? So now we have created the profiles which is necessary for URL filtering to work along with the antivirus, anti-spyware, vulnerability protection and file blocking. So these are like recommended settings you should be using along with the URL filtering, but this is something we just clone from the default policy we had, right? But you have to be more specific. For example, in the file blocking, if you want more file to be blocked, you can block those files in here. Let's say in antivirus you want to be more strict, you can click upon the profile and you can be like more specific. I guess you may already have gone through the creating the security profiles related to antivirus, anti-spyware, those kind of thing, but we are just creating here, so we are not going to miss these important steps, right? Now on the firewall, let's go back to policies again. Now let's click upon the policy again, and in the action now we should be seeing all those profiles. As you can see, like antivirus, if we vulnerability, go to strict policy, and let's go to anti-spyware, this is AS. On the file blocking, let's select the strict file blocking. Now the wildfire analysis, I'm going to select WF. So this is how you can target if you select the option which is profile. But let's say you want, I do not want to go through all this practice for all the the policies. So what you can do, you can also select the group. So group is something like it's going to combine all this together. So let's click upon group, and in the group you are going to get the option which is the group you have created. Since we do not have any group, so let's do one thing, let's go and create one of the group. Now in the objects, if you come down little bit, there is a security profile groups. Now click upon add. Now let's say we are going to create this profile for the desktop users, so I'm going to give the profile name. So let's give some name which is would make more sense. So group desktop users, for example, right? So now we are going to select all the options which is going to be used for the desktop users. So antivirus, for example, I have created for antivirus profile. Now the next one is anti-spyware, other is vulnerability protection. So let's select one of the policy we created. Another is for the URL filtering. Now this is like URL filtering we created, right? So we want this profile to be part of this group so that we can target on the security policy. Now other policy you can also target in here, for example related to file blocking, and the next one which is the wildfire analysis. So we are not selecting for the data filtering for now, and then press OK. So we have created one group in here. Now let's go under the policy again, and in the policy click upon the policy we created, and in the action, now in the policy we did not have that group name, but now you can see that we have the group name we just created. So what is happening basically, instead of clicking upon the profiles and targeting each and every policy one by one, we can simply just click upon group and we can target the group what we have created. Now the next setting is related to logging settings. If you want to log the traffic which is coming from user and going out to internet, so you want to see the log, you can send the log to your, maybe if you have Panorama or if you have like Cortex data lake, so you can send the traffic from here related to this specific security policy or traffic, right? Since we have selected all the options, so all we need to do is we just click upon OK. So since we have created our first policy, now let's see what's going to happen. Let's say we have this in firewall, okay, and we have like many users connected behind the network. Let's say we have 2 users. Okay, let's say is user A, this is user B, and the traffic is supposed to go to the outbound internet, right? So what is going to happen, for example, user A is going to request for the google.com, so traffic is going to come to the firewall. Now firewall going to check its policy, so this policy which is on the top is going to match, and the firewall going to see, okay, the traffic is requested from the LAN zone and is belong to since source any, so I'm going to match the IP address of this particular desktop, and since user ID is also any, so it's going to match, it doesn't matter which user ID it is. Now the destination is going to see, okay, the destination is internet zone which belong to this outside zone. Now the next is going to look for what is the destination address, so it's defined any, so it doesn't matter which destination address is. After that, it's going to look for the application. Since application is any, it's going to check further, it's going to check services, it's going to see, okay, services is also any. Now it is time to take action. So it is time to take action what we have defined to allow. But now confusing part come, because once we have created this policy, we think like, I have given the action which is allow, that means the traffic should be working fine for the outbound to the internet. But the problem comes when we have enabled these profile options. So let me show you what this icon means. If we click upon this particular arrow, it's going to show you the filtering name, which is the group desktop users. So this is basically the name of the group we have selected, as you know. So it's going to match the group and it's going to see what are the conditions defined under the group. For example, in this specific group, we have added one of the URL category, as you know, okay, for example, and in the URL category we have like many categories, as you remember. So for example, if someone is trying to visit this social networking website, and in the social networking website we want the production user should not visit social networking website. So for example, if user is going to visit the website like facebook.com or twitter.com, under the URL category is going to hit the social networking category, and under social networking category is going to check upon the action, and the action, let's say we have defined which is deny, then it doesn't matter whether your action here is allowed, but your traffic is going to be denied. So this is one of the confusing setting engineer might face when they are dealing with both like allow action under the policy, at the same time they are also using the profile, and under the profile if the final action is denied, then your traffic is going to be denied. So I hope you understand what I mean is, once you create the security policy, is going to check upon the action what you have selected, but at the same time if you have also created the profile, it is going to check what the settings you have enabled under the profile. And for example, if it is related to URL filtering, it is going to check which profile you have created and what are the category you have enabled under that profile, and what are the action you have taken for that specific URL category. And if it is related to some category which you are blocking, so what will happen, it doesn't matter you are selecting allow here, it is going to drop at the final stage. So basically what is going to happen is going to take two action. First action is going to take with the security policy what you have created, whether it is allow or deny. Then the second action is going to take by the help of the profile, right? And specifically when it is related to URL filtering, this stage might going to confuse with many engineers. So you have to be very careful when you are dealing with the profile, what are the profile action you are taking under the profile, right? Now I hope you have understand until this. Now let's move on to our next challenge what we might gonna face. Now let's say there is a group of people, for example these people belong to marketing team and they are like 20 people. Now the job of this marketing team is to do some research on the social networking website. For example, there is a domain, let's say this is facebook.com, right? And these 20 people would like to access Facebook because they want to do marketing on the social networking for the company. So our job is to allow these 20 people so that they can visit the facebook.com. But if they are going to access internet, what will going to happen, they're going to hit this first policy, and in the policy we have given action, but in the profile our action is when the user are visiting to the social networking website, for example Facebook or related to Twitter, the action is denied, right? So what will happen when this user going to access facebook.com, the action is going to deny, right? Now we want these 20 people should have an access to the facebook.com. So in order to give access, we need to create one more profile specific for this marketing team, right? Because we do not want to edit any of these existing setting which belong to maybe thousands of people, right? because we want to give access only to these 20 people. So let's do one thing, let's create one more policy. So it is not going to match this policy, but it is going to match only for these 20 people, right? So let's go and create the policy. So to create policy, we can just click upon add and we will follow the same step. For example, social networking for marketing team. Okay, social. Then after that, search. As we know, this zone is LAN, and here you can target the IP range which belong to the marketing team. For example, the range for the marketing team is 192.168.20.0/24. For example, these are the range which is specifically assigned to the marketing team. But if you have also enabled the user ID, you can also click upon this and you can target that specific user ID, right? So let's say we are going to target with the subnet we have created for the marketing team. Then the destination, I'm going to select internet, and destination address, since it is like Facebook, Twitter, we do not know the address of them because they are on the cloud, right? Now the next is application. You can target with the application as well, for example related to Facebook or related to Twitter, but let's say I'm going to select any for the testing purpose. Now the services, it can be HTTP, HTTPS, but let's say any. Now in URL category, here you can actually target the URL category. For example, I want the user to be access social networking. These are the marketing teams, so I can either select this, which is the category. So under this category, it is going to come all the websites related to social networking. But let's say there is a requirement that I do not want them to access all the social networking website, but I want them to access some specific website for related to Facebook and Twitter, maybe 2 websites only, right? So in there, what you can do is you can go into the add, and into the add you can target the custom category what we have created. So let's add this one and let's do some tweaking in there. So let's say okay in here, for example, because we had added multiple URL list into that category. So let's go to objects, into the objects, let's go to URL category related to social networking website, right? Now our goal is to not to allow all the website, but just to Facebook and Twitter, right? So I'm going to select Facebook and Twitter, and I can delete all this. So let's say I have created one of the URL category related to social networking website, and I have added only these 2. I will press OK. Now let's go into the policy again. Now you can see the policy has been come under this desktop internal all users. So we need to move this policy at the top because we need to match that policy first, so that the social networking website is going to work for the people we want to access. Now let's go to service URL category again, and it's already selected, so it's going to match only those 2. Now in the action, this is the area you need to be very careful. Now in the action, I'm going to say allow, but in the profile, now I need to define what profile action I want to give them. So in the profile, you need to select profile because we want them to not match the URL category, but we want them to match the other policies related to antivirus, other, like let's say strict policy for vulnerability protection, related to anti-spyware, and related to file blocking, for example, then wildfire, right? And you can also create a group for this particular setting. Just you need to go and create one of the group, select URL filtering as a none. So what will happen is not going to match the URL filtering because we want them to only match the social networking website, right? So this is done. We have selected record option, we have click upon OK. So now what will happen, when the traffic is going to come for those marketing people, it's going to see they belong to this 20 people, maybe subnet, and it's going to take action. And the action is only going to match profile related to antivirus, anti-spyware and other, but it is not going to match for the URL profile. Now in this condition, traffic is going to get allowed because we are targeting this traffic by using our custom URL category. Now let's go into the profile because we want to make sure the social networking we have denied in here, right? So let's go into the objects. Into the objects, we created the URL filtering, right? Now let's click upon the profile and let's search for the social. Now we see here the two categories. First, which is custom URL category. This is coming from the one we created manually, and this is something predefined. This is coming from the Palo Alto database. Now the action we see here is allow, because we did not do the fine tuning when we created this profile. But let's say we did the fine tuning already and the action was like block, right? So what could have happened if the user was trying to visit that website related to social networking, should all get blocked, right? So I have selected block, just making sure this is block. Now if we go back to policy, if the marketing team are going to visit to the social networking website, they're going to match this first, and they're going to be matched with this particular URL category we created for social networking, and then going to get allow. But besides like marketing team, if other user are coming, they're going to match the second policy, and if it is related to social networking, they're going to get deny. So that is how we can keep creating the policies after policies based upon the requirement is coming. For example, in future different department is going to request for different website or different URL categories, so you can apply the same step, and all you have to do is you have to change the URL category. For example, different department is going to request for different category. All you have to do is you have to go into the services and URL category. So you can define either the category you are creating as a custom, or you can add any predefined category which is already available on Palo Alto database. But you need to make sure the predefined category, when you are selecting, it is going to match all the category. But when you are selecting your custom category, that means you are restricting with this specific URL, right? So that is you need to remember, or otherwise you can just use the profiling, and in the profiling you can make all the necessary action for making the deny or allow or alert kind of decision. But that is going to be more confusing. But if you are getting the request based upon specific URL, it is best to target by using the custom URL category, right? So that is how we can create the policies for URL category, and we can make this firewall work as a web proxy, right? Now you must be having question that we made all the changes related to URL filtering and we made this firewall to work as a web proxy, right? But why we did not test any settings on user machine? The answer to that question is, if we go into the objects, and in the objects if we come into URL filtering, and as you can see it has a warning that is license required for URL filtering to functions. So the thing is, we do not have the license on this lab firewall. So if we try to test this on user machine, it is not going to work in this particular scenario. But trust me, we have made all these changes with that step I have shown you, and it just worked fine. And we are like working with the URL filtering all the time, and everything works just fine. So all you have to do is you have to just follow these steps. Like you'll have to start with the certificates, then you have to configure the URL filtering profile, then decryption profile, then you have to create policies. You should be starting with the decryption policy first, because in some cases you might forget to create this policy and you might be wondering why my policy is not working. And in some cases actually it happened with me. So you have to first apply decryption policy, then you have to keep working with the security policy based upon the requirement you are getting, then you have to apply that profile under the security policy. So those are all the steps needed in order to work this firewall as a web proxy, and trust me, it's going to work fine. But in case if it is not working, you can just put in a comment that what went wrong. Maybe we can have some solution in the future. So this is for now, and I will see you in the next section with different topic. All right, see ya.